Hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about making your sketches more interesting. I know a lot of people keep sketchbooks, and they also have trouble keeping sketchbooks. And until a couple years ago, I was in the same boat. I had trouble making it through a sketchbook. I would get about halfway through before getting bored, and thinking my sketches were so bland, so boring, so ugh, that I would move on to the next sketchbook, thinking this one's going to be way cooler, this one's going to be more awesome. And it never was, because I didn't change anything. One of the reasons I think people have trouble keeping a sketchbook and completing it is because they use only one art media to make all of their sketches, and they aren't happy with how it looks. You want to be wowed by your sketchbook, just like you're wowed by everyone else's sketchbooks, right? Well, let's see if we can help you with that. So in today's video, I'm going to show you all of the supplies I use to sketch with. And I'm going to try to use every single one of these in one sketch. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each of them as I use them. So let's start by talking about pencils. Mechanical pencils are popular. They're cheap, you never have to sharpen them, so you know the line is going to be consistent. However, I wouldn't recommend filling an entire sketchbook with only mechanical pencil sketches. One reason being that the lead is quite soft, and unless you plan on spraying a fixative over the paper when you're finished, you'll open your sketchbook a couple months later and find that all of your sketches have blurred together and smudged. Besides, we want to change things up, right? We want to make our sketchbook as interesting as possible. And if they all look like the same gray mass, then it's not going to be very remarkable. Now, I have no problem with mechanical pencils, and I'm not saying to never sketch with them, but if you only use these to sketch in your sketchbook, it's going to look rather bland. So let's change it up a bit. Artist pencils. Now that's getting a little out of your comfort zone. They come in a wide range of lead hardness, so you can vary the darkness of the lines and do some really cool shading techniques because these pencils blend really well. The only thing is, these have the same drawback as the mechanical pencil. They smudge. Not as bad, and you can still spray fixative over the paper to fix that. But unless you plan on spending a lot of time fully rendering your sketches, they might look flat and bleh. Again, there's nothing wrong with these pencils, and they can look really amazing if you spend time and really work at them. But if you fill an entire sketchbook with just pencil sketches, it might look a little lackluster. And that's what we're trying to work on, right? Now, my personal favorite of the pencil family is the colored pencil. I just started using these a few years ago to sketch with, and boy, it really made a difference. Even very simple sketches look way cooler when drawn in color. You can choose a different color for each page or have a color scheme going on in your sketchbook. Now, I'm picky about the colored pencils I use for a couple reasons. I use Prismacolor Verithin colored pencils because they act a lot like artist pencils. They have a harder lead than most colored pencils, and they're not as waxy. And that's another reason I like them. If you plan on using a water-based media over top, such as watercolor or acrylics, you'll find that if you use regular colored pencils, they're too waxy, and the water does not play well with that. On to pens. Now we've officially left your comfort zone. We bought a one-way ticket out of there, and there's no going back now. Pens are scary and intimidating because you can't use an eraser. Well, buddy, you gotta let go of your security blanket eventually. Or not. I can't tell you what to do. I don't let go of my security blankets. Anyways, sketching in pen can add a ton of visual interest to your sketchbook, and when you successfully complete a sketch using only pen, you will feel incredibly proud of yourself. Now, if you want to lay out the shapes and get all the basics in with a pencil, go for it. I did it first. There are a lot of different pens to choose from. Ballpoint pens, like this Bic pen that I'm using, are incredibly cheap and the ink lasts a long time. Now, if you're going for archival and fade resistant, these might not be the best choice. The ink is formulated to write shopping lists and personal memos, not great works of art that will be displayed at the Louvre. But since most sketchbooks don't get prolonged exposure to the sun, I don't see any harm in using these. Now, the nicest pens are these Pigma Micron pens. They're pigment-based, archival, waterproof, and fade-resistant. They come in a bunch of different sizes and colors, so you can really get creative and go crazy. The smaller sizes are perfect for adding teeny tiny little details, and I love to use them to create fur textures when I draw animals. Brush pens are another way to add a lot of interest to your sketches. You can create a cartoon or graphic novel style artwork with these because of the fine and bold lines you can create with this one pen. I like this particular brush pen by Pentel. It is a water-based ink that doesn't bleed through to the other side of the paper. This pen is awesome. Now that we've talked about all the things you can sketch with, let's talk about all the things you can color your sketches with. A lot of people like to use markers to color their sketches, like this alcohol-based Spectrum Noir marker. I do have a little tip about markers though. Most markers don't say if they are alcohol-based or water-based ink, but if you use an alcohol-based marker with an alcohol-based pen, such as the Micron or this ballpoint pen, you will find that it makes the line art bleed. And if you're like me, and you never got quite confident with markers, you can just pick one color to add interest to your sketch. Sometimes I just draw geometric shapes in the background behind my sketches to frame them. My go-to for coloring sketches is paint, particularly watercolor. You can add color washes, backgrounds, and all kinds of interesting little details. Sometimes I even go in with the watercolor first and then sketch over top. And who says you have to use realistic colors? I hate to break it to you, but my dog isn't actually blue. I chose the color scheme before I even chose what to draw. And that's something that might help you out as well. If you choose 2 or 3 colors, then you'll end up with a cohesive color scheme, even if it is not the same colors as the animal or whatever you're sketching. And another paint you can use is acrylic paint. Just like the watercolor, you can also go in first with the acrylic paint and then sketch over top. I just chose to make a simple geometric shape for the background. Warning with this one, if you plan on going over top of your sketch with acrylic paint, you may lose your lines, since it is rather opaque. And also, if you want your pages to lie nice and flat and your sketchbook to look pristine after you use acrylic paint in it, you can forget that. Gouache is another one of my favorite paints to use in a sketchbook. It's like watercolor, you can thin it down to be as transparent as you want, but it also dries matte and somewhat chalky, so that can sometimes be a challenge if you want to sketch over top. A lot of times I will go in with my colored pencil and sketch out a subject and then paint over it with gouache, and you can barely see the colored pencil afterwards. Gouache is less likely to buckle your paper than any of the other paints that I use, so if you still want your paper to lie flat and your sketchbook to close, you might want to try out gouache. Now, if things are still not interesting enough for you, you can add embellishments to your sketch, like this gold paint. You can fill in shapes, create a background, or just highlight the lines you've already drawn. This paint has an acrylic base, so you can also lay down this paint first before you sketch over top of it. They also make metallic watercolors and gel pens if you want to try out those as well. You can add all sorts of things to embellish your sketches. Think outside of the box. I bet you never thought about using washi tape on your sketches. Oh, you have? Well, how about ribbon, or beads, or glitter? The sky is the limit. The only limitation is how well you want to be able to close that sketchbook when you're done. Because the more you add to it, the less likely it is that those pages are going to lie flat. Now, I don't always follow my own good advice. I find myself getting stuck using the same thing to sketch with until I get sick of it. So sometimes you have to make a conscious effort to mix it up. Just reach into your art bag and pull out the first thing you find and start sketching. Or maybe flip to random pages and put a dab of paint or a dot of your pen just to remind you that when you get there to use that medium. It's your sketchbook. Have fun with it. I hope this video was helpful. All of the supplies I use will be listed in the description below. If you have any questions or have a suggestion for another video, leave a comment, and be sure to subscribe for weekly art videos. Bye!